The President.
The
Council resumes. We'll continue our motion debate on assisting young people in their development on all fronts. Mr. Tam Kyu-chung. Young people are future masters of society, but because of globalization and rapid development in neighboring cities, young people in Hong Kong face a lot of challenges when they're growing up, and they also lack upward mobility. And in education, employment, and housing, they face particularly stiff challenges. Unfortunately, the government hasn't got enough comprehensive policies to help young people on these fronts. The DAB hopes that the CE, in his policy address to be delivered next week, can have targeted measures to assist young people so that they can focus on their education, career, and housing, because this is in the long-term interest of Hong Kong. DAB is of the view that the administration should formulate forward-looking measures to help young people to resolve the problems they face in education, in employment, and in housing, and in forming families. My colleague, Dr. Chiang, has really elaborated on DAB's thinking on how to help young people in education and employment. My speech will focus mainly on how we can help young people to become homeowners and to start their own business. Many young people feel that there is little upward mobility prospect for them, and that has given rise to a lot of grievances, and they have adopted a rather laid-back attitude as a result, because property prices are far too high in Hong Kong. While some measures have been taken by the government, property prices are still beyond the reach of young people. As a result, they're not able to form new families, and they've also lost a sense of belonging for society. So it is important that we create a housing ladder for young people so that they can form their own homes, form their own families. They can build up a sense of belonging for the community, and young people can then be ready to bear greater responsibility, and they can change their passive laid-back attitude in life. The unemployment rate and interest rate are at a very low level in Hong Kong. Young people just lack the down payment for owning a flat, and there is a shortage of affordable, low-price housing for young people here. So the DAB hopes that the administration can implement the youth hostel scheme for young people to provide affordable rental, affordable housing for young people. They should be allowed to live there for a limited period of time, so that meanwhile they can save up for the down payment of their future homes. The administration should launch a new round of HOS as soon as possible and build no less than 5,000 HOS flats per year and 20,000 private flats, so that there can be a seamless housing ladder. Meanwhile, there should be more production of public housing, and the eligibility criteria for PRH should be fully reviewed, so that for young people who lack the means to become homeowners can join a more reasonable waiting scheme for PRH. Now I'd like to turn to how we can help young people to start their own business. Many young people in Hong Kong are very creative and ambitious and dynamic. They would like to start their own business. However, very often they lack startup funds and the necessary knowledge and experience to run a business, so they cannot make a start. All young entrepreneurs face the difficulties I just outlined. However, in small and large cities on the mainland, their governments have provided many targeted measures to help young people. For instance, guarantee-free loan government by the government or recyclable loans so as to provide startup funds for young people. The education sector and the business sector also join hands to offer training for young people so that young people can acquire the necessary knowledge and experience for starting their business. I think we have a lot to learn from these cities. DAB hopes that the government can set up business startup fund for young people, so that for those young people who have the plan but who don't have the means to have access to a startup fund. And there should also be training programs to equip young people with the necessary knowledge so that they can implement their business plans. As regards how we can encourage young people to be more involved in social affairs, now young people face various challenges, and I think the administration is not forward-looking in formulating policies for young people. A stopgap approach is usually adopted. We don't have a platform for young people to be involved in social affairs, and they're not able to take part in policy formulation. So either they are rather careless of what is happening in society, and some are more radical. They would even take part in illegal activities to express their views. Thank you. Ms. Sit Ho. Thank you, President. There was advertisement to support the anti-XRL movement by the post-80 generation, and according to the advertisement, the young people are going to win because they have plenty of time. Yes, we should assist young people to develop. It's not just the responsibility of families. It is also what is needed by society, because young people or the younger generation will have to take up the responsibility to help the community to move forward. However, there are different ways to do it. One is to ask young people to follow our own paths and do what we did in the past. But I think this is just wishful thinking, because we invented new technology, and society was developed according to our invention, and this has changed the way young people live. For instance, IT or computer has taken over many complicated computing work. The application of such software or such hardware also changed our lifestyle. The younger generation had a different childhood. The way they receive information is from virtual reality. The virtual reality is now reality to them. So their mode of development is bound to be different from ours, and therefore it is impossible to ask them to tread our old path. And therefore, why not let go and let them find their own way out? But of course, they are bound to run into troubles, meet with difficulties, and it won't be plain sailing for them. Our responsibility is to offer the most opportunities and room for the younger generation to develop in accordance with their own character and personality, so that they can have a full range of choices. We should allow as many opportunities for young people to attempt new things as far as possible. But for education, employment, and even courting and raising families, the conditions here are very unfriendly to young people who don't like to conform. For instance, why should we always go for home ownership when we consider to satisfy housing needs? Why can't people just feel comfortable and secure living in rented premises? So this society, and we have to look at whether the logic of our society is reasonable. Well, 2 days ago there was a logic question for kindergarten kid on Facebook. So even you were puzzled, Chairman. Now, if you are 3 to 6 years old, if you fail to do that quiz, you would lose out from the very beginning. So should we allow this existing model to continue to suppress our young people, making them failures? Among the amendments, I like Mr. Kenneth Leung's best because his gives most room for young people to find their own way. But I understand, of course, parents would like their children to meet with less frustrations and failure, hoping that the road will be safe, smoother. And that's why I understand why Mr. Wai-keung has proposed 22 points in his amendments. But these points are just tinkering with our existing system. They try to address the serious defects in our system. Still, he's still thinking of molding young people according to our own format. There is little room for young people to explore. For instance, if you do good in this exam, then you can move up the education ladder. If not, you turn right or you turn left. There is nothing innovative here. Whereas young people have their own thinking. Some young people like to become farmers. They like to take up farming. Some like to go on a holiday, a working holiday, and to bring back the cultures and new things they have seen back to Hong Kong and write them into books of their own. However, tinkering of the system like this is detrimental or not conducive to the development of our young people. I've recently helped a group of reciters of our previous advanced level examination. Many students did not know how their applications were considered by universities. So when young people go into this maze established by adults, if we do not give them a proper map, they will be lost and stuck, or they may have to take double the time in order to get through the maze. So this world designed by adults are not really friendly to young people. So there are defects in our system. We should give young people a second chance so that those who have lagged behind can catch up later. There are many people who are willing to challenge our institutions, for instance, members of scholarism. Well, their comments or their arguments in relation to our political system may not be very comprehensive, but we should feel glad for these people who are willing to challenge our existing system. We should not just claim, or we should not just pay lip service to what we want. The society is progressing, and we should be generous enough to accept challenges from young people and be willing to accept the future they are going to constitute, although we may find it hard to adapt to this new future. Thank you.
Dr. Kiki Kwok, Mr. President, it is a very meaningful topic for our debate. For we adults, some of us are the powerful, the rich, the privileged. Now we're trying to talk about something to help the development of the youth. Now, for the SLG, we have got the Youth Commission. The members are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They are the successful class. They try to decide the direction of the youth development. What's the problem? Now, if we have young people living in rich families, they're able to enroll with international schools, they go overseas to study. So they don't have a problem, they don't need our help. For those who have a problem, I don't think our policies can ever help them. In Hong Kong, the place is such that we are creating disappointments and failures. And as a result, our young people have no hope at all. I say this because 20, 30 years ago, we used to have this very famous play called 1/6. 20, 30 years ago, 1 out of 6 young persons got into universities. Nowadays, the ratio is much smaller, just 18% of the cohort. Yesterday, Mr. Yip Kin Yun, a teacher, told us about his views concerning our education. A few years ago, I read a book. There was a lady, Senator Chen, who went to Finland with her husband. And then she wrote a book saying that every child would come first in class. We can never learn the model of Finland. It is a very advanced country among the advanced economies. But then they have only one overriding principle. That is, you allow the young people to go their own way. Universities would not be regarded as the only route to richness. In Hong Kong, the government is doing everything to destroy the future of our young people. If you think that we study for DSE to go to universities, then please give each person a place. Sorry, just 18% of them will go to the universities. And then we have the associate degree courses, which are neither here nor there. You finish your studies, and then since you have high expectations, then you won't want to take up a job which is regarded as beyond your qualification. And they don't get any articulated courses. They want to continue with the studies. They spend more money, and then at the end of the day, they find that everything is futile. In our society, we don't have a lot of channels for them to move upwards socially. It doesn't matter because we don't need everybody to become a university graduate before they become successful. We have got many examples. Mr. Donald Tsang is one such example, though he isn't a very good person. But many people haven't had a university education, and yet they have been successful. For our current system, only 10+% of our students get a place in the university. We used to have practical schools and vocational schools. We aren't talking about Ivy, but in fact, even during the secondary years, students can have something more practical to learn. Now, everybody sits for the DSE. You either go to universities or you don't, and then it seems that you have no future. Of course, I don't want to talk about the property market and startup of business. Now, for Futan and Kowloon East, when there is a change in the policy, then all the industrial buildings have become Grade A office buildings or hotels. So young people don't even have a chance to start their own business. If you lend money to them, it's even worse because they become indebted for a sum of over $200,000. This society is sick. We don't have different channels and routes for the young people. I don't think we should tell them that they have chosen the wrong route when they finish DSE. I think well at the stage of primary school, they should be allowed to adopt a wider perspective. And I don't think the society should just favor the U grads. Now, recently we know that nobody is interested in becoming a port pilot, and then nobody's interested in the transport industry. This is because we have narrowed the path for the new academic structure, everybody is made to believe that university is the only goal. For the middle-class parents, of course, they expect their children to go to universities. For the grassroots, I think they want something more practical. Therefore, at ivy, we have got a lot of people called failures. Some of them have learning difficulties. Had they been allowed to choose differently, then they will have a different achievement. Now, for those teaching at ivy, they really have a hard time because all the students have different backgrounds, and we haven't got the proper diagnosis for students with learning difficulties. Now, ivy is getting mad, and ivy would like to provide degree courses. Now, for higher education, we are all talking about degree courses. Is it for the sake of students? No, they just go after the dollar sign. Education is an industry, so it is the most profitable industry. And then for Lingnan University, their associate degree courses is a case in point. Now, nobody will be interested in sports. Everybody set their eyes on DSE. No one would want to get training in sports, and we haven't got enough facilities. We have asked schools or clubs to open their venues to school children for sports training, and yet the request was not being met. It seems that it is a waste of time to talk about our grievances, but still I hope that the two directors of bureaus will do something to address the problem. Thank you. Mr. Raymond Chen. Thank you, Mr. President, for Dr. N. Zhang's motion to help the young in a comprehensive way. I think when we talk about the policies, we need to be diversified. We have to be open-minded in our outlook. Today, I don't think I will be talking about anything that is very sort of inspiring. I just want to share some views with you so that you can sort of be more open-minded. For legislators, parents, service providers, etc., we should cast off our old-style mindset. It is not for us to say what is right, what is wrong, and then we make all the preparations, we decide the roadmap, and then the young should go along the route already planned for them. This is narrow-minded. It is no longer relevant to today's world for the young people. Being comprehensive, well, there isn't anything being called comprehensive. We need to be creative. We have to think out of the box. You can't aim at being exhaustive. You can't say that you can think of all the possibilities and try to provide the assistance. Now, there was a student who said that he had this goal in life, that is being a driver for a tram. The teacher said that he was not hardworking enough, and then the parents were summoned to school, and then everybody scolded him. Now, parents all think that their children should become a professional after going to university, get married, buy a property, set up a business, and become the boss. Well, in fact, today, many parents still have this sort of thinking. For the government to measure the success or otherwise of its youth policy, I think the same indicators are being used. Academic results, percentage of young people having university education, number of people setting up their own businesses. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but first of all, we have to ask whether our young people are happy, whether they think that they lead a meaningful life. Yesterday, Mr. Zhang, the SHA, gave an opening speech. There wasn't anything wrong in his speech. He talked about positive values. He talked about all-round healthy development. And then he talked about the uniform groups. He said that every year subvention has been given to the 10+ uniform groups. And then there were $54 million given in the past year. And then 130,000 young people benefited. I read this speech. I think the same would have been applicable 20, 30 years ago. But I don't think it is relevant in today's world. They're cliches. They are being patriarchal. I think 30 years ago, I was just too obedient, too good. I became naughty after the age of 30. I used to be the best student in class. When I said that I turned naughty, when I turned bad, I mean that I departed from the sort of conventional ways. I used to be a scout. For being a scout, you're supposed to be obedient. You have to follow the orders. So that would be very different from pushing over the meals barrier. Now, it is said that we should have healthy habits. We shouldn't be sort of being addicted to drugs or the internet. So whenever we talk about anything positive, anything healthy, of course we won't approve of murder, rape, or violence. But then the SHA would say that voluntary work should be promoted. Doing voluntary work for the people power, would it be approved? What about joining the scholarism? So are you really encouraging diversity among the young people? If they take part in the democratic movement, if they talk about universal suffrage, if they join the campaign, Occupy Central, I think in the eyes of the government, it is not to be discouraged. It is not healthy. Now, starting up a business, buying a property, giving assistance in the academic life, I have reservation. Now, as I have said, you won't want to let them take out a first home loan because you are actually giving them a burden. It means that he can never dream of changing a job, even if the boss is a bad one. And then for starting a business, 9 out of 10 would fail, and then at the end of the day, you will become heavily indebted. I used to teach at the Open University, and then the students thought that they would like to take out courses to become a DJ or to take part in filmmaking, thinking that many more TV stations will come into operation. Some even thought of going to Taiwan to study a particular course. Now it is found that there won't be a third television station, and yet they have already committed to a relevant course. Now, on the one hand, we talk about create Hong Kong, creativity. It seems that we're helping the young. But then the society has such a set of policies and the government has such a mindset that it seems to me that we are going on a contrary route. And then some members talked about upward social mobility. Do you know that young people don't want to go upwards, they would rather move downwards. Because today there is this article in the newspaper, a post-80 generation young person would like to quit his job because in this way he will be qualified for public housing. And then even for young couples, they would rather choose a inferior job so as to qualify for public housing. So it has all become very distorted. No one would be interested in giving full pay to his potential. When he's supposed to do his utmost, he would rather quit the job so as to qualify for public housing. Such young persons should have belonged to the middle class, and yet they would rather fake as grassroots so as to get public housing.
The Honourable Ma Fung-kwok. Mr. President, first I'd like to thank Ms. Anne Chang for moving the motion. Young people are the pillars of our society. However, it's unfortunate that what we see today is that young people are very worried about their future, and they are the group that have least confidence in themselves. And an earlier survey showed that only over 60% of interviewees thought that it was not happy for them to stay in Hong Kong, and 47% of them had a negative attitude or negative view of their future. Many of them said this was because there was no ladder to go upward in society, and also there was the valuation of a degree, a university degree. So the worries of young people have not been plucked from thin air. Behind this affluent veneer, our industry structure is very much limited. You can only become a professional like a doctor or accountant, or you can only involve in investment and speculation. So it's easy for young people to harbor a passive and negative attitude. So I think we need to do something positive to support young people. First of all, academic pursuit. Many members would like to have more subsidy for UGC subvented or funded places. I subscribe to that view, and in the past I said many times in this council that the administration should take up policies. Say, for example, 28,000 people are given the eligibility, but then the subsidized places are still around just 15,000. In other words, about half of the eligible or qualified students have been refused a place in university, and the overall academic pursuit rate is less than 20%. Hong Kong is a metropolis, and we should show more commitment in nurturing our talent. And also, with regard to the loan scheme, there should be some change. We should have a loan scheme for students who would like to study overseas. Those who have no means but are talented should be able to read courses outside Hong Kong, so we nurture our own talent. And those who go outside Hong Kong and even to Taiwan should be able to get a loan. With Greater China economic development, we need to know more about the mainland. So I hope the administration can really think about making this change seriously. In terms of employment, many people say that Hong Kong young people are not competitive. When we have globalization of the world's economy, and when China is rising, we do not have enough opportunities for upward social mobility, and young people cannot land a job of their choice. Working hours are long, and the wages are not progressing with inflation. So many of them are very negative, and they blame society, they blame government and employers. In fact, young people's worries and their expectations are understandable. I emphasized many times in the past that the administration must tackle the very limited economic or industrial structure and the lack of degree places. So we offer more choices to students. In the last term of government, the administration was quite ambitious in saying that they would like to develop the 6 industries with a competitive edge. However, we do not see anything coming out of that initiative. Say, for example, in terms of cultural industry, all these years, there was the creation of the Create Hong Kong, and then the Hong Kong Film Development Council, etc. But then with limited space and also limited financial resources, we cannot see a comprehensive industrial policy in terms of manpower, financial and policy resources. We don't see the complement we need. They are quite fragmented, and they are piecemeal, and you only tackle small problems, and therefore young people who want to go into different trades don't know what to do. They are quite at a loss. Mr. President, for those of us who are more aged, when we were a student, parents would say, as long as you work hard, there will be a future for you. It won't be a problem for you to buy property or set up a family. But for this generation, parents always have to push them. They may have to go into commercial studies, and then when they take up a job, it's best if you can go into the banking or the property industries. So young people have great pressure on their shoulders in choosing a job that would be recognized by society instead of a job that meet their interests and needs. I remember last year, there was this press report saying that someone really talented went his very good paying job as an accountant, and he became a bus driver. But how many youngsters and their parents are willing to take that kind of risk? I can see there are young people with a lot of sports potential for sports and other talents, but then this is because of society's recognition. They let go of their ideals, and they choose a job so-called recognized or held in high regard by society. So I believe apart from professions and investment, etc., I think we should develop new trades, new jobs, so young people can choose a job akin to their grain. And also, we'd like to nurture our young people so they are people of integrity when they are also skilled. In traditional Chinese thinking, virtues are more important than skills. But then times have changed. Many parents and schools only put emphasis on academic results and train our students to be competitive instead of also equipping them with virtues. And these students become examination machines. They don't know how to interact with people. They are not resilient in case of adversity. And therefore, they are criticized as high academic performers, but they are lowly skilled in other areas. So we should nurture the right values in our young people. In these past few years, I have taken part in life experience camps, including an element of military training for secondary school students. But then, unfortunately, these are not subsidized by government. Young people are individuals. There should be enough opportunity for them to be trained so they can nurture values and their interests. Apart from strengthening life and career training, there should be a diversity in our industrial structure so students can put their knowledge to practice. Ms. Claudia Mo?
I do wonder, I seriously wonder, how many people in this council, while talking about this grand topic of helping our young on all fronts, would actually think of our ethnic minority young. They're just as Hong Kong as any of us. Many of them, their families, have been here for generations, 100 years, 3 consecutive generations. We all care about how many of our students can get into university. How many of us are caring about how many ethnic minority students can get into our local universities. Couldn't care less, right? They're somehow foreign, right? I wasn't going to talk about, to speak at this particular session. I thought it's going to be all hula baloo. You can talk all the sweet talk. It's all phony if you don't work on any of the policies suggested. Oh, we'll seriously consider what the councillors have to say. Well, then forget it. Stop wasting time. Our ethnic minority young face a lot of inequalities. Let's be honest about it. Unfairness, even injustices in many cases. I was very upset yesterday when I came across this apparently exclusive report in manpower. It says, the headline says, ethnic minorities fight for Chinese as second language curriculum. But sources say the government would only set up career Chinese training. Excuse me? What's this about? Mr. President, I actually talked with the education chief not too long ago about this ethnic minority thing on the language front. So we all learn English, supposedly at least, as a second language. It's a complete failure on that front too, but I have no time for that today. Never mind that. But then why should ethnic minorities not learn Chinese properly as a second language? Oh, it says here, unless, I hope the education chief would say, oh, it's a misunderstanding. The report is not quite right. It quoted the wrong sources or things. It says, apparently you or your representative have been telling ethnic minority community representatives too, your counterparts, that within the framework of Chinese as a second language, I hope it's a policy, right? You would be doing a bit more, including strengthening assistance. I don't know what assistance you have got at the moment to our minority students learning Chinese, and you would be setting up assessment mechanisms. Well, that's good news, I thought. Okay, and also you would be subventing local teachers who are willing to learn, to get more professional training, to become teachers who would be teaching Chinese as a second language. That's all good news, but no. The report says, first of all of the above are not sure. It's not clear if it's been, they have been admitted into the policy paper. And secondly, sources say, as of now, the government would only do one thing, and that is set up career Chinese training programs. Excuse me. Another year? Another year of studies, consultation, consideration, this and that and the other? How could you? If that's really, really the case, I know many people would say, all right, if we're not teaching ethnic minority students Chinese well enough, let's do better. Let's teach better, that's all. Bye-bye. That's indifference. And indifference is the worst form of discrimination. They're an excluded group of people. They're very different. We have special measures for them. And all on their ethnic differences. How do we answer to not just questions, but accusations like that? Most of our, well, practically all of our minority students, after completing their secondary education, supposedly having learned quite a bit of Chinese, know their Chinese level could be as low as primary 2 or primary 1. I know, of course, you have a lot to do, and I'm not putting any personal blame on you, Mr. Education Chief. But then we can't drag on and on like this. You told me there should be good news, and I would be happy by the middle of January. If this report is for real, it's yesterday's manpower, I would practically accuse you of lying. And this is just not right. Nowadays, every member in this council keeps talking about we need to have fair starting lines for our young. Our minority students don't even have a starting line. Thank you.
Mr. Mnangsing, President, young people learn language, knowledge, and they accrue experience, they develop, and then they could become a productive force for sustaining the development of society. So young people are our future pillars. Now there is speeding up of aging in society. So young people will have to show the heavier commitments. And after development, at the same time they face the challenge of lower competitiveness. So it's important that we help them to have sustainable development. It's urgent too. Now, from foundation education to secondary education, young people will then have to make a choice of whether to go on to tertiary education or to start working. And if they start working, they may need vocational training to upgrade their skills before they could start working, or they could build their own business. And then, of course, then they will start a family. From education, employment, housing to business startup, on all these issues, this council should take a close interest in them. We must also help or promote assistance for young people in these areas. So there could be assistance on all fronts. And for that to happen, the government must take the lead. It has to formulate a youth policy. It has to come up with initiatives to give support to parents, schools, youth groups, or even business groups. And we should all work together to achieve our future goals. Now, education is the most important aspect of youth development, because in schools, students are trained in academic studies as well as the other virtues. And also schools help build interest in for students, and then they will have to also adopt an international outlook, and young people may join uniform groups, and there are visits organized for them, say to businesses and so on, so they know what the real world is. This is all good preparation for them before they start a career. Now, for my organization, we often organize student visits. And so the students will learn what a banking business is like. They can also speak to frontline staff and so on. And the government should also increase the number of tertiary education places so there are more young people able to receive tertiary education. Now, from quarter-three statistics of the Census and Statistics Department, the overall unemployment rate is 3.3%. That's almost full employment. But then for the age group 15 to 19, the unemployment rate is actually 14.9%. And 17%, there's a 70% underemployment rate. For the age group between 20 and 24, the unemployment rate has been hovering at around 8% for a long time. That shows that for young people with no or little work experience, it's difficult for them to join the workforce. If we do not improve the situation soon enough, that would lead to even more social problems. The government, voluntary agencies, charity groups, and so on, they all give support to youth development, and that they are doing it in the right way. On cross-generational poverty, this council has approved $300 million for the Children's Development Fund. So we could work. So the government could work together with the business sector and other sectors to give support to the long-term development of young people. Now there are saving schemes, there are funds matching schemes, and so on under this fund. This will help children to learn skills in managing their own affairs. It will help them to come out of poverty in the long run. And also, we need to impart more knowledge in young people and help them, train them in various skills. So we have the YETP and other schemes under the Labour Department. There are also various apprenticeship schemes and trainee schemes under the Vocational Training Council. So all these would help young people. But of course, on assistance to young people in their development on all fronts, this is a major project. It will need the collaboration of the entire society. We need to plow in a lot of resources and so on, and there's a need to boost our effort on all fronts. And of course, we must also help young people build confidence and also acquire the right values so they will truly be our future masters. Thank you.
多謝主席。主席，喺過去嗰幾年呢
Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, Mr. President. In the past few years, I often accepted invitations from schools and youth groups to have exchanges and sharing with them. sometimes I would ask our young people what they would like to do in future or what their ideals are, but unfortunately the answer often is, I don't know, haven't thought about it, and so on. Well, I don't think that's good. Young people, in terms of the prospects, the way forward, or their life goals, they don't have a clue, and that means they will have anxiety. They don't feel at ease, and you can imagine the stress on them. Now, if young people could not develop their potential, that will push up the unemployment rate for young people. It's also a waste of social resources invested in them. It's also waste on human resources in the community. I've actually moved a motion before about young people. I said the government should, in terms of education, employment, training, housing, there should be more a comprehensive policy to help young people. Of course, we cannot see results in just a year or two, even with these initiatives. And I can see that the government has already put in some effort in terms of housing and training for young people. But then in terms of employment and education for young people, it doesn't seem like government has come up with any new ideas. Now, Ms. Anne Chan moves this motion on assisting young people in their development of all fronts. Now, I would like to speak particularly on employment for young people. Now, many parents have this preconceived ideas that students should learn some skills. But I think there's an outdated mindset. Now, we live in an advanced society. How come our parents still have such outdated mindset? That's one reason. I believe one reason is because our education system actually encourages such a mindset. For example, in the new academic structure, applied learning is not compulsory subject. It's just a new elective subject. So that means students will still spend a lot of time on core subjects like Chinese, English, and mathematics. So how is it different than before the reform was carried out? As for other learning experiences, llI, they may seem to offer a lot of flexibility for students to do a lot, as if students could also learn all sorts of knowledge. But actually, the objective of the subjects and such that it's not focused enough. So if you try to do too much, probably you end up doing nothing. It would be a waste of resources. So I think the Education Bureau and the Labor and Welfare Bureau should explore this. During the secondary school stage, we should allow students to get in touch with the real world, to get in touch with the workplace. In other words, for various businesses in different trades and industries, could the government encourage them to provide attachment opportunities to students? Because then students will benefit. At the same time, businesses will fulfill their corporate social responsibility. Well, this is something being done in other Western countries for a long time. In BC, British Columbia, in Canada, there's some program. I've read some materials about a CAPP program. That is, during secondary school, students must complete at least 30 hours of work before they could graduate. And they made it clear working experience is not other learning experience, but rather in every secondary school there is staff responsible for liaising with companies and businesses, and in the light of the interest and aptitude of students, and students would take up voluntary attachment. Well, this may be voluntary attachment, but students will still have to go through formal interviews. They have to prepare their own curriculum vitae, and if they do something wrong at work, they could be reprimanded by their supervisors. It's like they are actually working. So we have to do it like it is in real life. Only then would students be able to find out exactly what their interest is and what their aptitude is. Now, for the llI, it seems that it does not achieve that sort of effect, I think the Secretary should spend more resources to explore this, to see whether you could make any improvement here. And then for students, if they want to go on to further studies, they face a lot of hurdles. One of the biggest hurdles is, of course, inadequate university places and high tuition fees. So that's why I would ask the Secretary to provide more scholarship places for self-funded tertiary education. This will encourage more students to go on to further studies. And also there should be more articulation places for sub-degree graduates. So sub-degree graduates could eventually proceed to receive subsidized tertiary education. And there should also be loans for students to go to study in mainland universities. So we're providing more opportunities for students so they could complete their tertiary education. And on student loans, I think the government should allow students to start repaying the loan only 1 year after graduation. It will help to relieve their financial burden. Now, young people hold a lot of promises, and we never know what they are able to achieve. So we should go all out to help young people. But of course, we shouldn't be like helicopter parents in controlling young people, but we should give them a nudge in the right way as they start out. This is squarely the duty of the government. So I hope the government will pay attention to the employment, the housing, education and business startup issues of young people. Thank you.
Madam Chang Yun-han. Thank you, President. The direction of social development should be towards building a warless society. But it appears that our young people are at dead ends and they feel various obstacles in housing. Well, they cannot be allocated PRH and they cannot afford private housing. They face limited choices in employment. And only 80% of our young people can get to universities. The unemployment rate among young people is particularly high. For the third quarter in 2013, unemployment rate among our young people was 14.9% and also 10% for other age groups, whereas the overall unemployment rate in Hong Kong was very low. For those who are below 24 years old, the unemployment rate is particularly high. Many people blame the young people for not willing to endure hardship and therefore the high unemployment rate. In fact, young people are very creative. However, choices are limited for them. We focus on financial services, and young people have no choice but to join the catering sector. However, in this sector, working hours are long and employees are overworked. For Chinese restaurants, the conditions and also pay are very unfavorable. Young people like to join new eateries where the place is cleaner and work is not so hard, so that they can work happily. In many restaurants, well, at festival times, employees are asked to sell special festive food, and if they cannot sell up to a certain quota, they have to buy it themselves. For the retail sector, there are 18.6% in between 15 to 24 years old, and 30% of them in between 25 and 34 years old. So please don't say that young people are not willing to work. 40% of them are in the retail industry. Young people like to join the retail sector, but because the rental is high, pay won't be high, and the working hours very often from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And employees expected to arrive before business starts, and after closure of business, they have to also tidy up. So very often workers have to work for more than 12 hours, and they're not paid for this OT work. So employees are being exploited. You can go to famous chain stores and you see that this is just a commonplace happening. As a result, young people don't have time to continue their studies. Well, other than the financial services, what sectors do we have? Can people choose to join the creative industry or to become farmers? Well, there is no policy and no venue for them, and rental is high. Revitalization of our industrial buildings. The government has not considered how creative industries can be protected. Rental in industrial buildings have gone up. Some of the artists are forced out. So this is just another property development program. In Beijing, they have special zones for artists and for the creative industry. Beijing 789 is a very famous artist zone. We see cafes and galleries there. Is an important cultural icon. And for Shanghai, there is also a similar area, the area used to be steel factories. Now they have boutiques, cafes, and a lot of cultural and heritage elements. Well, I can give you a lot more examples. All right, looking back to Hong Kong. We no longer have local culture economy. We only have big shopping malls selling the same famous brands. And even the design of shopping malls is carbon copy of one another. So how can we have creative industries in Hong Kong? Some young people, well, if they cannot do well in school, they can make bamboo baskets. They can sharpen choppers and knives, and they can pick up different types of Chinese handicrafts and crafts. However, nowadays these are no longer popular, and these are dwindling sectors. Workers may enjoy this kind of work, but these shops are being evicted because of high rental. The government should have training program for craftsmanship so that people who are interested can receive training and we can hand down this fine tradition. FTU has organized courses. However, we want to start this project. We need the cooperation of government departments. Lastly, whether you talk about a space under bridges or flyovers, you should make room for creative industries. Because you need a clustering effect. During the SARS outbreak, we had a fair at Wong Tai Shin. It was very well received, and an NGO was asked to run it, and there were only 60 stores allowed under the management of the NGO. When we ran it, we allowed 300 stores. So employment of young people is a big problem. Thank you. Mr. Chung Kwok Pan. Thank you, President. Many colleagues talked about more education opportunities and training opportunities for young people. I like to tackle this problem from a different perspective. Of course, I will focus on my own sector, garment and fashion making. We have young designers who are qualified, educationally qualified. They have vision and ideals. It's not difficult for them to find a job. Employment rate for design school graduates is almost 100% in Hong Kong. But they have the feeling that their talent is not being properly recognized and they can't do what they really want to do. So they have received a lot of schooling. Some graduated from very famous design schools, St. Martin in London and also in New York. Some won awards in international competitions. However, when they come back to Hong Kong, they feel that their talent has no use in Hong Kong. So is it true that they don't have any opportunity for development? The answer is no. They've asked us what the government can do to help young designers. I told them there are bound to be opportunities. Come next week, TDC will start its spring fashion festival with major fashion competitions. Some design students were elated to win prizes. But then, what then? What will happen afterwards? Hong Kong should not just rely on one or two industries. We all agree that we should develop creative industries. Young designers can lead Hong Kong on this front. So why do they feel so bad? Why are they so disillusioned? Now, to develop creative industries, we should pick one or two industries. The fashion industry is well equipped with locally trained and overseas trained designers. We have a very solid foundation in garment making, and it's also time for us to transform this industry. We've also got access. We also have access to international markets. South Korea is a successful example. Why is it that South Korea was able to do it, whereas in Hong Kong, with all the prerequisites, and yet we cannot achieve what South Korea has achieved? Just a month ago, Mr. Gregory So and Madam Hui Hiu-fai, assistant of Mr. Zhang, were models in a fashion show. They met with many young designers. They felt that these young people are very dedicated to this industry. Mr. So and Ms. Hui agreed that there is plenty of room for further development in this industry. I submitted a proposal to them, and if Mr. Zhang is willing, I can show him my proposal. Then we can help a lot of young designers. I went to a big shopping mall in Tsim Sha Tsui. I met a young designer, local designer, who was trained in the UK. Now she's in control of 4 outlets in Hong Kong. Do you know how much she's paying in rent? $150,000 per month for one shop. She's able to survive because she has business. I think she's really smart. I am sure that we can pick fashion design as a starting point. And if we succeed, then I think other creative industries can follow. There are 2 things the government can do. We should set up a startup fund for creative industries, for young people who have creativity and entrepreneurship. Of course, they can survive as employees, but it is the dream of young designers to have their own brand and their own shop. If we can have such a fund, I'm sure it will be very favorable for these young designers. And I hope the government can establish a platform to nurture their creativity. I'm not talking about coaching them how to do business. Rather, you should give them the opportunity to try. People from different sectors can meet young people with potential through that platform and help them to develop their own brand names and even their own shops. I think Mr. So should have been here as well, because he should learn how we can help young people to develop creative industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Chinese New Year is just round.
Mr. Abraham Shek.
The biggest present the government owes our young people is support and care to lead them out of their miseries, particularly their education, jobs, and housing woes. In fact, these are not desperate problems, but different facets of the inadequacies of the government policies as a whole. With few possibilities for social advancement, young people feel aggrieved as they don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, nor do they harbor any hope for their future. Their sufferings begin with education. While well-off families can arrange for their children to study in international schools or abroad, as many government officials do, casting a vote of no confidence in Hong Kong education system. The majority of the children from ordinary families have no option but to stay in a system that is teeming with capricious reforms, putting them in a marked disadvantage to other children's right from the start. Worse still, if these children make it through the public examinations, many of them will be barred from entering university due to the lamentable university enrollment rates, which stand at around 18% each year, making a mockery of the former Chief Executive, Mr. Tong's ambitious plan announced in year 2000 policy speech of achieving a 60% tertiary education popularization rate within 10 years to serve our knowledge-based economy. The government has taken a forced roundabout route to achieve this misconceived goal with a laissez-faire policy of self-financed sub-degree programs that lack regulatory oversight and quality controls. As a result, many of these sub-degree graduates end up finding themselves badly in debt, as well as failing to live up to the expectations of the Hong Kong demanding employers. They went into the system with hope and enthusiasm. They left the system with neither hope nor any enthusiast interest. Mr. President, to rectify our education holes, government must ensure that every child, regardless of background or ethnicity, receive a quality education on an equal footing. 15 years of free education and small class teaching across the board should be implemented as quickly as possible. A tailor-made Chinese curriculum for the non-Chinese speaking students, which is long overdue, must be provided to help ethnic minorities overcome the Chinese language barrier. They deserve better than just being security guards, construction workers, or practitioners of offensive trades. They too should have equal opportunities to develop their careers and further their studies with dignity for social advancement. While I share the view that many of the public-funded undergraduate places need to be increased to allow more people to receive an university education, the government should provide a clear vision to young people about where a university education will lead them. Take, for instance, the PCLL, for example. Only around 45% of the local students are admitted to the PCLL program each year. A majority of the local law graduates are denied access by the three great universities to the PCLL program after 3 or 4 years of training. They encourage them to go into the system, and they denied them the chance to even enter into a profession which they deserved. Even if they want to be lawyers, they would not be given a chance to sit for the examination to become qualifying legal profession. I strongly urge the government to look into the present system of allowing this three university to play God and decide who should enter the kingdom of legal profession, and also to expedite the review being conducted by the Standing Committee on legal education and training, with a view of mapping out favourable changes in the present system of legal education and training in Hong Kong. That would create a win-win situation to both the legal sector and local law graduates. On the job front, it is clear that there is an education-occupation mismatch for the young people, and almost non-existent income growth for the young people. According to the census, the median income of people aged between 15 and 24 was only $8,000 in 2011, which was the same figure as in 2001, despite rising education attainment during the same period, with the percentage of those receiving post-secondary education surging from 19.5% in 2001 to 39.3% in 2011. Clearly, the unchanged income level of young people, which have failed even to keep pace with inflation, is a de facto penalty for over-education. One of the very reasons for this deplorable situation could be the lack of progress in promoting Hong Kong economic restructuring. The CE announced in his maiden speech address that he would set up an economic development council, but a year has passed and no notable achievement have been seen. In fact, the Legacy Task Force on Economic Challenges to develop the sixth industry, where Hong Kong enjoys a clear advantage to diversify our economy, announced in 2009, the government must refrain from bureaucratic indecisiveness and instead deal with this mismatch pragmatically via concrete action. Our young people are in dire need of support to explore the blue ocean of the market. We must create an environment conducive to nurturing our budding Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Thank you.
莫乃光議員。
主席首先我多謝
Mr. Charles Mok. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm grateful to Dr. N. Chiang for moving this motion. I had prepared a speech, but I don't think I should be talking about IT all the time. It seems that I'm just applying the same speech to every topic. Well, today I think many members have talked about the use of IT to help the young and how life has changed. I don't think I need to talk any more about IT. Perhaps I should focus on something broader, helping the young people on a comprehensive scale. I've looked at the amendments proposed by members. They have already broadened the scope of the debate. Now, Mr. Wai-keung has included 22 points, and Mr. Kenneth Leung doesn't like the lengthy amendments. I'm in the same position. I do think that amendments should be sort of applied in such a way. Let me talk about ways to help the young people. Let me ask this question. Do young people need our help? You always talk about assistance in this form and that, and we tell them that we'll be leading them in a particular direction. Is this the right mindset? If we are talking about this all the time, they see us on the TV talking about how we're going to help them. So young people will then think that they are waiting for help. They will be thinking of finding ways to join the queue for a flat in their PRH. Now, the other day on TV, we saw an interviewee saying that he was a university undergraduate and then he's queuing up now for PRH unit. Now, if you love somebody, set them free. I think it's part of the lyrics of a song that I like. If you love somebody, you need to liberate them and let them have freedom. They should also be allowed to go after their dreams. When I first read about the topic of this motion debate, I think we should address all the monster parents. I think Mr. Peter Cheung is saying that I'm offending all the voters, that is the middle-class parents. Well, I think even the monster parents know that they are not doing the right thing. The other day, I had lunch with some friends from an IT company. We talked about the attitude of young persons. I asked them whether parents will accompany the young people to go to a job interview. I think as parents could take their children with them to ask for a resignation. They may be making $20,000, $30,000 a month, but then the parents don't want their children to go off work so late. For Dr. N. Chang's motion, I think the wording is such that we would help them to build a bright future with greater confidence and a pragmatic attitude. What is meant by a pragmatic attitude? What is meant by unrealistic? I think young people can be imaginative. They're entitled to be having a free hand. They don't have to wait until they're in their 50s and then they want to break out. I think I'm not objecting to the ideas in the motion or the amendments, but I'm afraid that the mindset will be quite similar to what Mr. Raymond Chen has said. We are acting like omnipresent parents and we're not actually helping the young. The other day, we had a function. Female university undergraduates sort of gathered together so that they can go into careers that seldom see women. And Sarah Lee was also present. It is said that we haven't been giving too much support to the creative industries. Well, we want the government to do more and to do better. Now, I would tell the young people that yes, there is room for improvement in many sectors, but then in Eastern Europe, in the United States, in Japan, and even in Africa, they have got many people coming to Hong Kong saying that we have got favorable business environment, we are providing a lot of support, and so they want to come here to start the business. I'm not saying that I found the government doing very well in all aspects, but then if we want to be mending and repairing in all sorts of ways without pushing the government to adopt an overall direction, it will be futile. So finally, I would like to say that I agree with what Mr. Kenneth Leung has said in his amendment. That is, we want to have a diversified economy. As many members have said, we shouldn't be focusing on the property market as well as the financial services industry and then ask the young people to wait for their turn to get a PRH unit. If we continue along this route, then competitiveness will be eroded. Now, in the function called Girls Smart, there was a winner who said that all their all their peers have joined the investment banks. So for the academically smart, they all joined the financial services industry. But then this girl left that sector and she would rather go into the educational sector. She told me that for those who are not so academically achieved, they are just queuing up for PRH units. They are waiting for welfare payment. And therefore, our society is losing out in terms of competitiveness. I think for the amendments, they can become a topic for motion debate on their own. For us to restore hope for our society and for young people in particular, I think we should think out of the box and we shouldn't have the same mindset in the motion. I want to take this opportunity to say that we need to let go the young people, let them have freedom, allow them to have a favorable environment to develop. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Honorable Alan Leong, President. When the Civic Party submitted our proposals for the policy address, we mentioned that we would ask the administration to immediately start a comprehensive study on problems faced by young people in society, and there should be a new youth policy according to the survey findings. Mr. President, that was one of the proposals we made to the Chief Executive. This is because we could observe that young people in Hong Kong cannot see much hope. Youngsters who are in their 20s earn very little money, even if they are graduates. The entry pay is like 9,000 to 12,000 a month, and when they have worked for 10 years, their salary is not much higher. It may be in the range of $20,000. Hong Kong's industries are very limited. Young people cannot see how they can give play to their potential and creativity. They project that by the time they get to their 40s or 50s, their lives would not be very much different. Therefore, many of them cannot see a future. They cannot see hope, and so they get frustrated. I can also tell the administration that we are talking about constitutional reforms. Why is it that so many young people are speaking up? They are standing up to try to fight for an ideal situation. Why is that so? It is because they are victims of the system, and they are going to be victims for their whole lives. Mr. President, I have heard many members say that we should set young people free when they speak on the topic. I agree with them. Because of time constraint, I cannot go into too many areas. But there is one thing that I would really love to put on record today, and that is that our education system does give people the impression that it is right for one to be frustrated about it. It is not just the system itself. It's very rigid. What we teach also cannot prepare the new generation for leading a meaningful life. So young people can make the right judgment and live with integrity. Perhaps this perspective of mine may cast the motion today too wide, and I may be setting it too high, but I won't apologize for it, because, in my view, to help young people develop, we must start from the root. Now, what do I mean by the root or the fundamentals? Mr. President, I do encourage young people to appreciate the arts, literature, and also to delve into philosophy and read history so that you understand the past. There was a survey that said, or a study that said, 30 years down the road, out of the jobs in this world, 60% of them are not seen now. So if today you just give people the technical knowledge and skill, maybe this cannot be applied in the future. But if they read literature, they appreciate the arts, and if they can then understand the rationale behind every happening, and if they understand the values beneath what is superficial, I'm sure they will stand to benefit as long as they live. Arts and literature serve that purpose. So does philosophy. Things that happen in this world make one quite lost. You are like in a maze, and you cannot understand what lies beneath them. But many philosophers are like those who gaze at stars. Even if they are in a maze, they will look up to the sky and they will find a way out of a maze. History can help even more. Well, we always say, remember the past, and so we learn about the past and don't make the same mistake in future. But then we are not doing enough reflection when we read history. A lot of things that we now see are not unique. There must be a causal link with something else. Mr. President, I have spent these 7 minutes since Mr. Eddie Ng, the Secretary for Education, is here. People are placing less emphasis on the humanities, meaning arts, history, and philosophy. Even in universities, the places offered to read these courses are shrinking. This worries me. I hope, Mr. Ng, after you have listened to me, can think about this for our young people. And that is how we can, again, give recognition to the arts, history, and philosophy, that they should be given the right place in helping young people develop and grow. Mr. Wang Yukman, thank you, President. In November 2012, when we had a debate on showing concern towards young people's education, housing, and employment needs, I said that people should be free, but then there are constraints and barriers everywhere. I already pointed out at that time that Hong Kong's unjust economic and political system have put constraints on Hong Kong young people. Education serves the capitalists, and once they graduate, they have a big debt on their shoulders. They will have to repay the SFAA loans, or they would exceed the credit limit of the credit cards, and you have to repay the loans for until you are 30, but you only get a job that pays you $10,000. Even if you have a job, you have a difficult time making ends meet. Some young people defend justice. They are active in social activities, and then the pro-establishment would attack them, and the police arrest them. In the earlier motion, it was moved by the DAB. As the chairman of the DAB just said, young people are the pillars of our country, and everybody can say that young people are our future. Those are platitudes. But the present education system cannot solve problems. The Secretary for Education is here. Education should impart knowledge, and you should also help people build their dignity. In a capitalist society, with functional thinking, education seems just to prepare people for a job, and you study well, you sit for examinations with good results, and then you get a good job. This is the legacy of the feudal system of China, that whatever you do, you should read to get an official job. But then scholars should also work for the benefit of society. However, how many university students now are doing that? And that is by having a university degree, you also work for the benefits of society. There are none, because the education they get now do not help them have integrity. It is bad to lose at the starting line. On the internet, not too long ago, in Germany, it is said that before 6, you should not teach the children. And in primary school, people of different age groups would be lumped together. People have free education, and half of the Nobel Prize winners are German. But then we say that at the age of 3, you should learn everything. You are going to be trilingual and biliterate, and you have to learn to play the piano, etc., etc. This kind of education system is not helping young people, Mr. Secretary. We also have the Secretary for Home Affairs. He could have been the Secretary for Culture, and he is laughing or smiling. Why is he smiling? You always talk about patriotism and Chinese culture, but our young people take part in activists or social action. And Wen Tianqiang also said that we should read literature and history in order to work for the benefit of the present society? Are we doing that? If young people can learn knowledge while they study and become people of integrity, then there must be progress and harmony in society. But young people now learn the wrong thing because this is promoted in the upper echelons. What are our officials doing? Look at them. You should be ashamed when you face your ancestors, and also you should be ashamed when you face your next generation if you are working for the government of 689. We are talking about a motion to help young people in their development on all fronts. Ms. Hon CHIANG, what do you mean by on all fronts? Can you accomplish it? How are we helping our young people? What the government is doing everything to be a bad example for our young people. You lie, and yet you put up a poker face. The constitutional reform is a mess. Even the pan-democrats, they have a 3-track proposal, and some of them say you can do without 1 track. Others say you must have all 3 tracks. Now, if there is a nomination committee, just talk about how it should be formed or composed of. Either you have public nomination, and you talk about political party nomination. Do we have political parties in Hong Kong? Your honorable political party is just a limited company. We don't even have a political party law in Hong Kong. So you are being a bad example for our young people. The Alliance for True Democracy had this press conference, and the Professor Chang said that there should be a 3-track proposal and all the tracks are necessary. But then today the DP says we can do without 1 track or 2 tracks. And what are you telling our young people? Mr. President, the entire ambience in society, the political ambience, the economic ambience, you are driving our young people into a cul-de-sac. They cannot see any future. This is all because of our political system and the economic system that distributes wealth unjustly. We don't talk about principles. We only look for benefits. We talk about a restructuring of the government. Remember, there was the proposal to have deputy secretaries, etc. And Ms. Hui could have become the Secretary for Culture. But then we mounted a filibuster, and then it collapsed. We must resist this government. We are talking about a small government, so why are you talking about more bureaus? So when you talk about helping young people in their development on all fronts, what is most important is to give them knowledge, help them become people of integrity. The rest would depend on an open-minded government. There should be free competition. There should be a level playing field. There must be justice in society. Otherwise, young people will be at a loss. What should they do? They get a job, and how much can they earn? They don't know what the future holds out for them. The DAB is putting forward these motions for a second time, but what are you really doing?
Dr. Kenneth Chan. Thank you, President. If there is a chance, I think if we can do better in this council, first we should invite young people here to follow this debate. And then we must first conduct a survey among them beforehand, so we know what the challenges they face, what the difficulties they face, and so we get a profile of their views, and then we listen, let them follow this debate, and then we do another survey, and then we'll find out from them whether they think this debate is relevant in any way to what they experience and feel every day. Why am I saying this? Because I'm concerned many of my colleagues, or even those who move this motion or amendments, may not have tried to find out enough. Now, there is a book, 2013 Youth Profiling and Analysis, published by the Federation of Youth. Maybe we should find out now about if they believe political figures are more concerned about personal interests than the overall interests of communities. 70%, or more than 70% young people very much agree. And then the government could reflect public views. More than 50% totally disagree or disagree. Another question. The SAR government could be trusted. More than 50% do not entirely agree or very much disagree. The performance of the LegCo is satisfactory in the past year. Some 60-odd%, close to 70% of young people very much disagree, or they do not entirely agree. So members, we need to be more modest. We need to do some soul searching. We have to ponder what is the point of saying all this. Because maybe there are a lot of young people listening to us, and they will say, oh, for goodness sake, spare us. Well, young people are after the dreams. They talk about self-realization. They want to go have different life and experiences. They go through different stages of life. They want to reflect. They want to feel. They want to experience. They want to participate. And they want to be held responsible for themselves. Now, that's only natural. The young people want that. So that's why it's dangerous to talk about planning. By planning, it leads us to think that maybe it's about planning being imposed on them. If we want young people to have self-realization and to pursue the dreams, we have to give them room. Mr. Gary Chan said that well, many young people don't know what they want to do, and he thinks it's serious. But then consider this: when you were 20 or you were a teenager, unless you were you were lucky, you were born into a good family, your family's planned everything for you, otherwise you wouldn't know what you wanted to do. For example, I once wanted to become a policeman. Thanks goodness I did not become one. And I also wanted to become an administrative officer. Again, thanks goodness I did not become one. Otherwise I'll be criticized all the time. And I also thought of becoming a primary school or secondary school teacher. Thank goodness I'm not one, because now they work so hard. And then maybe Mr. Peter Chiang is also asking you to hire more social workers. So you see, teachers have heavy burden. So unfortunately, I did relatively well in school. I managed to get a scholarship, so I left behind my family. I left behind my friends. And, you know, in the mid-90s, many of my fellow classmates already struck it rich. But then I went to UK to study. I took a strange subject about Eastern Europe. People said, well, you're so stupid. Why would you do that subject? You wouldn't be able to get any work afterwards. Why don't you do China study? That would be great. Now, at that time, many of my scholar friends went to the United States to take up China study, and they came back to Hong Kong. They managed to get work. Now, I just embarked on that path. I didn't think about it. No one planned anything for me. I just tried to pursue my own dream. I just wanted to ask questions, and I wanted to seek answers to these questions. So young people, if they haven't got any idea what they want to do, it's fine. What's wrong with that? Why do you think it's wrong? Young people want us to believe in their judgment. Young people wanted to be given the chance so they could experience, exercise their own rights and shoulder their own obligations and responsibilities. Because we say we want young people to have vision, to be creative, to have commitment, so they could become our future leaders. Well, these are just slogans, but do we actually give young people the room to try things out? When parents are working hard to support a family, would they be given time so there is proper work-life balance? Can we allow teachers not to take up so much workload? They don't have to take up administrative duties, for instance. Because you know, when I was young in school, teachers could walk around in schools asking students how they were doing, but now they don't even have time for that. And can we have a diverse choice of TV programs instead of boring drama series? And starting from kindergarten to primary school to secondary school to university, could we still give room to young people? Now, the chief executive may have some discussion at the Committee on Strategic Development. They had a few meetings, and then they came up with some ideas. And then they also try to drum up certain public sentiment, and then he came up with some incentives. And if there are problems with young people, which number do we call? So these are things we have to consider. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. President Dr. Kenneth Chan said he took up Eastern European study. And of course, he knows then an autocratic country could become one that's no longer the case. For young people should learn about history. Now, some gives this encouragement. This world belongs to you and to us. By the end of the day, the world belongs to you. You young people are vibrant and full of energy. You're thriving. It's like the sun at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., so all hopes are pinned on you. Ms. Anne Chan, don't criticize this. Now, I won't tell you who said this, but don't you try to criticize this. But anyway, I better tell you who said so. Otherwise, you could have stepped on landmine. Well, this was said by Mao Zedong. He met with a group of students who studied in the Soviet Union when he visited the Soviet Union. He said that he was already in his older years, not of much use anymore, but of course this paragraph was struck out in his speech when it was reported. But how come I knew about this? Because there was some political refugee who fled to Sweden. He gave evidence at a hearing. I helped him out. His surname was Chan, and he was one of the students that Mao Zedong spoke to. Now, he became a rightist, and after he was imprisoned, he again offended some military people. These days, they won't call them counter-revolutionary. They just fixed them up behind closed doors. And that doorman was actually chopped to death. And because people came looking for him, and when he learned about that, he just fled. He could speak Russian, he could speak English, so he's much sought after as a translator. He went to Soviet Union to work, and then he applied for political asylum. He took that opportunity to do so, and he fled China. He's a really bright individual. Now, because he's a leftist in Sweden, when he went to live in Sweden, he became municipal councillors of his town, representing the Social Democrats. So you can say he's really smart. And of course, he becomes proficient in Swedish as well. But then, of course, the Social Democrats in Sweden are not so popular anymore. They lost in many elections. I think this man is no longer a councillor. But anyway, what does this story tell us? Young people, what is most important for young people is that integrity. They have to be able to tell what's right and what's wrong. And someone said that the country belongs to us, society belongs to us. If we don't take action, who would? Again, this is said by Chairman Mao. But of course, he was able to motivate the young people then. But if you really believed in him, you would suffer. Now, we had autocracy in a country. Young people wasted a lot of time. And as you know, President, because of the Cultural Revolution, because of the one-party autocracy, they tried to create gods. And even today, in our country, the mindset hasn't changed. Some people still idolize Chairman Mao. They think that if they put Chairman Mao's image in a car, they won't have a car accident. And Chairman Mao's influence lingers on. So what I'm trying to say here, I'm saying that if you want to teach young people something, tell them to tell the truth. If in society we don't tell the truth, how can we teach young people to tell the truth? You do all evil in the real world. You cheat and deceive people, and then you tell young people to have virtues. Honestly, what can we do? Madam Chiang, I know you have good intentions, but you have to join me in criticizing CY Leung, because CY Leung told lies openly. You said you believed in him, but what good is it that you believe in him? We need to talk about the truth, justice. He said something openly, or you said something openly to defend a person who became a chief executive by telling lies. And when he granted TV licenses, he did so behind closed door. He just decided everything. And then when you asked him why that's the case, he said, well, because that's the confidentiality rule of the Executive Council, so he couldn't explain why the license was not issued. But it was just him and a few of his allies, like Hon CHIANG, who decided against issuing the license. But people asked him how come the license was not granted. He wouldn't say. If he truly the chief exec, he's the true chief executive, is all for justice, he would say, I'm the one who said I wouldn't give him a license for these reasons, but he dare not say so. Martin Liao, let me tell you this, but you have to go to court. Or that's what the chief executive said. I'll tell you the reasons, but you have to go to court. So it's a waste of time. But if the government doesn't say anything even in court, what can you do about them? Maybe they just don't mind losing the case. They would just say, okay, perhaps it's not a good decision, but what's wrong with that? So it's a waste of time, President. Now, in society, people lie on the question of universal suffrage is also a lie. It's not that the principles of the universal suffrage are important, but it's the basic law that is important. It's not what we want is important. It's what the officials want is important. Of course, then it's all pointless.
Does any member wish to speak? Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, President. I thank Dr. Hon CHIANG for moving this motion on assisting young people in their development on all fronts. Of course, we've tacked on different things, treating it like a Christmas tree, but it's also very hard. It's a very young people face many difficulties. They can't easily get married because they don't have their own flats, and it's not easy for them to be employed because the unemployment rate among young people is a double-digit figure. True, young people face many difficulties. They are not certain about their future. It's not easy for people to set goals for themselves in a place like Hong Kong. If I were a young man again, I would find it easily difficult. And it's particularly difficult for the underprivileged. Well, just Monday, there was a group of students who sat in the last term of Hong Kong Advanced Level Examination. Some of them scored A in Chinese history and Chinese literature, but they failed to get into university. These are students that should be heartily welcomed by universities. One student was really brilliant. I think he has scored some A's or B's in his examination. Mr. Yip Kin Yim discussed with him school uniform and school songs, and that young person had a lot of knowledge on school uniform. He was so eloquent. I teach in a university. I am in contact with young persons every day. I certainly feel that they're no inferior to as when we were young. The question is whether they have any chance in this unjust society. Their path is restricted by many obstacles. Why is it that for 20 years we haven't got more subsidized tertiary education places? Why do we have self-financing institutions in Hong Kong? Why do we force students to be indebted, heavily indebted, in order to sponsor their own studies? Just today, I had a meeting with the Director of Social Welfare. So there will be 3,000 program worker posts cut. I don't know whether we have any officers from the Labour and Welfare Bureau. These temporary posts have been temporary for the past 10 years. So where will these people go once these posts are cut? The government couldn't care less because the unemployment rate has gone down a bit. I went to meet with an alumni of a school for those with minor visual impairment. I asked them, would you like to continue your studies? Most of them said yes. Well, they had some disabilities, and the community has not given them a chance for further development. For those who are mentally retarded or with some disabilities, starting from 50 years old, they are asked to apply for adult support services. But actually, the service is not education-based. You only are given care. And for young people in the mainstream, they continue to receive education after they've turned 15 years old. What sort of a mentality is this? For those with disabilities, you are expected to go for either unemployment or a shuttle workshop after you've turned 15 years old. In shuttle workshops, they are asked to do very simple manual tasks, such as putting letters into envelopes, and they only earn $21 a day. Now, they are not treated as workers, and this is not really a wage that they earn. Is called an allowance. So in summer, they have to pay this institution an air-con fee. Now, if you are an employee, if your boss asks you to pay an air-con fee, you will find it strange. And this is the scenario faced by children or young persons with disabilities. So what chance of further development do they have? This is the way our system works. Once you are admitted into this stream, you stay there for life. Now, the mentality is the society is not meant for you, but we do offer you some offers, some service, and then we will look after you for life. And this llI Wing, he has some disability. He has got a master's degree on Chinese literature. 2 years ago, when he graduated, he published this book called Heng Zhao Chong San. And last year, he wrote an article for his own column in Hong Kong Economic Times once a month. He got $1,000 for about 2,000 words he wrote for that column. Now, he has applied for many positions and is finally successful in getting a clerical assistant position with the government. He has yet to resume office. So his story is just the tip of the iceberg. Mr. Tan Ka Piu. Mr. Charles Peter Mock referred to both macro aspects of this topic as well as the minor details. All right, I'd like to talk about cases. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from the Labor and Welfare Bureau. First, I'd like to talk about education. Some people say that associate degree programs are too many in the market. In fact, there are even preparatory courses to associate degree programs and higher education, higher diploma programs that can be regarded as equivalent to associate degree programs. But in fact, they are not really associate degree programs. They are only granted QF4 in the ladder. So they can get this QF4 standard, and they can apply for grant and loan from the Student Finance Assistance Office. In one case, a young person joined a preparatory course for an associate degree program on social work. Now, if you do really well in that preparatory course, then you can join the associate degree program, and then you can go on to join a social work program. But in fact, it's not easy. My assistant applied for a higher diploma as well as a degree program. He was successful in the former, but in fact, he was already a degree holder. And so the case I mentioned, well, he completed a preparatory course that cost him $20,000. He applied 2 years in a row. However, he was not successful. So he had no choice but to start working, and the government chased him for the debt because he hasn't completed his associate degree program. The registration to become a social worker, there is an independent council for registration. And I think the Hong Kong AAC has a role to play. However, these preparatory courses encouraging young persons that are not that competent and proficient, and they have been cheated into taking these courses. And in fact, the threshold for becoming a real social worker is very high. There are many such traps in the market. So many families owe tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and grants. So to help young persons to develop on all fronts, you must help them to deal with their loans they've taken out for their studies. Now, regarding the abolition of assistant workers' positions, they were created many years ago when the unemployment rate was low. So they've worked for 5 years. They're only getting $9,000 per month. There are 2,000 or so of them left, and then very soon all these posts will be cut, and all of a sudden 9,000 young persons will become jobless. As a member of a trade union, of course, I'm concerned about them. And I asked them, why have you stayed on for this job for so long? You can easily get the same amount of pay selling electrical appliances in a retail outlet. They told me because they liked the job. And it's not easy for them to stay in their NGOs. Given the one lump sum grant mechanism, NGOs would only create positions for social workers. Now, for many professionals, even accountancy, people could start as something like a clerk or apprentice. Why isn't it possible for the social welfare sector? The government has been very adamant. The administration said that they could work in elderly care homes so that these homes don't have to import foreign labor. Of course, taking care of the elderly is perfectly decent jobs, but these young persons will have to face a great change given that they used to serve young clients if they are to work in elderly care homes. We must have opportunities for these young people to continue to serve in the social welfare sector. Unfortunately, there is no one from the LWB here. So the administration should review its own establishment. We are very concerned that with the cutting of posts, many young persons will become jobless. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak?
Dr. Hon Chiang, you may now speak on the amendments. The speaking time is 5 minutes. Thank you, President. I must thank colleagues for speaking on this motion. In particular, I'm grateful to members who have proposed amendments to my motion. While I disagree with some of the amendments, there are some very positive and specific comments or amendments that have enriched my original motion. Now, this is my attitude towards the amendments. So long as they are in the long-term interests of young people, so long as they're helpful to the long-term development of young people, I will support them. First, I'd like to comment on Mr. Kenneth Leung's amendment. I believe that Mr. Kenneth Leung must not have heard my speech very clearly. And, of course, members had their own representations. However, I am the mover of the debate, of the motion, and they have not heard my speech very carefully before they criticized me. And Mr. Kenneth Leung deleted the part in my motion on career and life planning and also for savings. He's saying that parents should be responsible for the career and life planning of kids, and there is no room for the government to interfere. And some members, such as Dr. Kenneth Chan, said that we should not help young people in career and life planning. We must give them more room. Yes, true. You are outstanding talents. I said that you had not heard my speech carefully because I said very clearly that there are young people in society that do need our help. So can the government formulate more comprehensive policies to help them so that they can have upward mobility prospects, so that they can do better? I'm not asking the government to help privileged legislators like yourself. Rather, why I am saddened when I meet these young people in the community, people who need our help. So I hope that the administration can assist these young kids. Regarding Mr. Wai-keung's amendment, well, his amendment is very comprehensive, covering education, employment, business startup, and personal growth. He has provided a lot of suggestions which share our rationale. At least I agree to these proposals. They are conducive to the long-term development of our young people. So DAB supports Mr. Kwok's amendment. Regarding Mr. Cheung Kwok-che's amendment, he has included many proposals for the development of young people, so we will agree to that, as well as Mr. Chan Kim-po's amendment. Regarding Dr. Helena Wong's amendment, there is one point we beg to differ. He talks about scholarships for subsidizing for students enrolling in research postgraduate programs and so forth, so as to ensure that higher education resources are spent on local young people. She's of the view that resources should only be spent on local young people. This is a very dangerous thought, because the purpose of university education is to encourage academic exchange with other places. So I will abstain from this amendment. Regarding Mr. Michael Tan's amendment, DAB also supports it. Thank you.
Kwok-che.
Secretary for Education. President, I would like to thank Ms. N. Chan again for moving her motion. I would also like to thank the 6 members for moving the amendments and other members who spoke. As I pointed out in my earlier remarks, promoting lifelong learning, helping students to understand their interests and attitude, providing diversified and multiple pathways for further studies, helping students make effective planning for further studies or their career. These are one of the few primary objectives of education development. So in this sense, we share the same vision of members. I particularly agree with Ms. N. Chan that there should be early lifelong planning. I believe we should help young people. I agree we should help young people at an early stage in their development. I will repeat some points about how students about teachers helping students with career guidance and so on. The Education Bureau holds the annual certificate course in career education for secondary school teachers. We also have seminars, and then we have various other measures to provide a series of support for life planning related teaching. And we have a platform and that provides all sorts of resources, for example, Finding Your Colors of Life, NAS as career mapping, and e-navigator app. So we're using various means to help teachers with career and further studies guidance for students. The Hong Kong Association of Career Masters and Guidance Masters have a number of professional projects, such as the Summer Internship Challenge Program. It provides 2 to 8 weeks of work experience for students. They work closely with the business sectors. There are various partnership schemes. It will help students ponder their future career. I agree there's still a lot of room for enhancement, and we'll certainly consider them most carefully. Today and last night, a few members mentioned the sub-degree programs. I would like to say a bit more on this, especially the recognition of the qualifications. In the 2013 to 14 academic year, there were 405 full-time sub-degree programs. Of them, 259 are higher diploma programs. This is the self-funded education system, and they are thriving on their own. Now, many are concerned about the recognition of the sub-degrees by employers. Recently, there have been some study findings that for graduates who perform at satisfactory level, or rather satisfactory level, or very satisfactory level, the percentage are 93% and 64% respectively. But of course, there's still room for improvement, but I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of the quality and the recognition of sub-degree qualifications. Mr. Andrew Leung and some other members asked how we could suggested how we could further promote vocational training. So there will be a solid foundation for young people aspiring to acquire skills. It will help to support their personal development and help them realize their dreams. One of the examples is the Vocational Training Council. It now provides 250,000 places, including high diploma courses, short-term on-the-job training courses, and so on. So they cover all aspects, including applied science, design, engineering, hotel tourism, early childhood education, business administration, and so on. So there are both theories and practicals, and it covers both applied knowledge and general knowledge. It will allow students to realize the potential, and they could choose to go on to further studies if they wish. A few members, mentioned how we could help students take up further studies and lessen the burden, how we could further enhance these measures. Now, on the assistance schemes and measures, we do conduct regular reviews. Starting from 2011, the means testing mechanism has been improved as well. Now, the percentage of tertiary students receiving assistance, that's gone up from 38% to 60%. That's a substantial increase. That's an indicator to show that the measure is popular among students, and many are able to benefit from it. For assistance given to tertiary students, yes, we have loan schemes, including the interest-free loan schemes. And the grant, on average, is about $40,000 per academic year. Dr. Helena Wong mentioned in her amendments, she asked the administration to consider a university voucher. I would like to point out the government has already launched a number of schemes, grant schemes, loan schemes, and so on. And at the policy level, we provided $3.25 billion of tertiary education fund. That's to enhance the quality of teaching and learning. We also offer scholarships to tertiary students. So we have a series of support measures, and that should allow tertiary education to develop in a healthy manner. So we do not see the need to consider vouchers at this point. Young people are our pillars, President. We've heard a lot about that, and we agree that is indeed the case. So the government will give them active support so they could equip themselves, realize their potential, and then they could face future challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Secretary for Home Affairs. Mr. President, the debate held today and yesterday once again shows that we are all very concerned about the development and the growth of our young people. As Ms. An Jiang has said, young people are the future masters of the society. They are our hope. So we need to help them in all aspects so that they are ready for the future challenges. There are many valuable comments. A lot of the suggestions are in line with the government's philosophy. As we have already mentioned at the outset, the government has been working hard in terms of youth development. We would like to nurture a new generation with vision, creativity, leadership, and commitment, so that in different positions they can take Hong Kong forward. As we have already said, we would like them to be self-reliant and they have independent thinking. A lot has been said about life and career planning. This term has been imported from overseas. It is not uncontroversial. We have to make sure that we understand all the complex factors. In one's life, there are ups and downs. There is sunshine as well as rainstorm. And sometimes we are caught by surprise. Mr. Ronnie Tong has said that he cannot plan his son's golf interests. Taking members' speeches into account. I think we need to look at the target. If the target is to ride bicycle and yet you go to practice golf, then you cannot achieve your goal. And then we need to make sure that everybody is ready. And we have to be realistic even if we want to pursue our dream. Therefore, we have to make sure that the young are ready and they are equipped adequately. They should be given adequate training so that they can grab the opportunities to develop. The Youth Commission has advocated the idea of diverse excellence so that young people of different aptitudes can give full realization to their potential. The HAB has been cooperating with different organizations so that we can help the young to develop in an all-round fashion and in a healthy manner. We would like to help the children to be prepared, and this is in fact the motto of the Scouts Association of Hong Kong. To enable young people to have a meaningful training outside of the classroom, every year the HAB has been subventing various uniform groups, and the Hong Kong Scouts Association is one of the uniform groups with the longest history. In fact, we have got many groups, many teams. We have altogether 43,000 team members, including the ethnic minorities. The Scouts Association of Hong Kong has taken part in different kinds of gatherings, including those on the mainland and in other parts of the world. There are different kinds of activities, and we hope that we can train their integrity, we can help them develop a sound character. Members also said that we mustn't forget the importance of arts and culture as well as history, knowledge of history. As the SHA has said yesterday, we have already done a lot of work in such regards, and we want to encourage the young to take part in public affairs. There are advisory bodies and statutory organizations. We would like to take on board appropriate members. We take into account the ability, expertise, experience, integrity, and service records of the candidates. We choose the right persons to suit the needs of the relevant bodies. And in fact, for the Youth Commission, we have got members with the following backgrounds: social work, youth service, scholars, community leaders, businessmen, etc. And in fact, 60% of the members are aged 39 or below. And we have been making use of different kinds of channels to collect the views of the youth, including the internet. Members also mentioned housing as a major concern among the young. We do understand this point. To solve the housing problem, we have already taken on board a lot of initiatives. We would like to enhance the housing supply. We are reviewing the long-term housing strategy and would like to increase the land supply. The HAB has announced the policy concerning youth hostel. We would like to release the potential of unused land. The youth hostel scheme means that those young people who are at work can have their own living space within a short period of time. This is the aspiration. It cannot solve the problem of housing for the young for the long term, but at least we do provide an opportunity for the young to save enough for their future homes. NGOs will be given help. And in fact, young people will be allowed to rent for 2 years. The total rental period cannot exceed 5 years to make sure that opportunities will be left for our other young people at work. One will be developed in Tai Po and the other in Sheung-wan. They are the pilot schemes. In 2016-2017, they will be completed respectively. And there will be other new projects and more places will be made available. We hope that we can ease the problem of housing for the young. And then for the Youth Square in Taiwan, under the operation of the HAB, in fact, the utilization rate is going up. We have the Wai Auditorium, the Wai Theatre, and the Wai Hostel. All of them have recorded a usage rate above 80%. It is a very important base for youth development. For the Youth Square, Yes, we have to look at the cost effectiveness, but we should give priority to its social benefits. The government has continued to provide a reasonable level of resources, and rentals must be affordable to the young. And in future, we will be providing venues to the young at a rate affordable to them. We are going to provide other concessionary rates so that the young can start their own business at the youth square. Comprehensive and all-round development of the young would depend on the government, the community, and other service groups. Will continue to cooperate with all sorts of organizations so as to help the young to face their challenges. The HAB will cooperate with the Youth Commission as well as different local organizations so that we can drive youth development. So I speak. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll call upon Mr. Kenneth Leung to move an amendment to the motion. President, I move that Dr. Chiang Lai-wan's motion be amended. And I propose a question to you, and that is that the amendment moved by Mr. Kenneth Leung to Mr. An Chiang's motion be passed. And I'll put a question to you as stated. Would those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. Mercy Kwok-che claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Display the results. Results. Members from FCs 26%, 14-0 against, 8 abstentions. Members returned from GCs 24 present, 18 yes, 0 no, 5 abstentions. The question is agreed by a majority respective each of the two groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Ronnie Tong. President, I move that in the event of further divisions being claimed at this meeting in respect of the debate on helping young people to develop on all fronts, the Council shall proceed to the division after the division bell has been rung for 1 minute. Now propose to you, and that is the motion moved by Mr. Ronnie Tong be passed. Would those in favor please raise their hands? Those against please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority respective each of the two groups of members present. I declare the motion passed. I direct that should further divisions be claimed at this meeting in respect of the motion on helping young people to develop on all fronts, this Council shall proceed to the division after the bell has been rung for 1 minute. Mr. Kwok-che, as Mr. Kenneth Leung's amendments may pass, I now give you leave to amend the terms of your amendment. President, I move that Mr. N. Chiang's motion be as amended by Mr. Kenneth Chiang be further amended by my revised amendment. I now propose the question that is that Mr. Wai-keung's amendment to Ms. Chiang Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth be passed. I'll put a question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. John Wai-keung claims a division. The division bell will ring for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting is closed. Display the results. Members returned from FCs 26 present, 14 yes, 9 no, 3 abstentions. Members returned from GCs 24 present, 16 for, 3 against, 4 abstentions. The question is agreed by a majority respective each of the two groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. John Kwok-che, as the amendments by Mr. Leung, Kenneth Leung, and Mr. Wai-keung have been passed, I now give you leave to revise the terms of your amendment. President, I move that Ms. Chiang Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung and Mr. Wai-keung be further amended by my revised amendment. I now propose the question to you, and that is that Ms. Chiang Lai-wan's amendment to Mr. Chiang Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung and Mr. Wai-keung be passed. I'll put a question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority respective of each of the two groups of members, that is those returned by FCs and those returned by GCs through direct elections were present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Chen Kim-po, as the amendments of Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Kwok-che, and Mr. John Kwok-che have been passed, and I give you leave to revise the terms of your amendment. President, I move that Ms. Chiang Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Kwok-che, and Mr. John Kwok-che be further amended by my revised amendment. I now propose the question to you, and that is that Mr. Chen Kim-po's amendment to Ms. Chiang Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Kwok-che, and Mr. John Kwok-che be passed. I now put a question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against please raise their hands. Mr. Sin Chung-ka claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please, Mr. Ibrahim Sheikh, please check your votes. If there are no problems, voting is closed. Display the results. Results. Members from FCs 26 present, 18 yes, 5 no, 3 abstentions. Members from GCs 24 present, 15 yes, 4 no, and 4 abstentions. The question is agreed by a majority respect of each of the 2 groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Dr. Helena Wong, as the amendments of Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po's amendments have been passed, you may now move your revised amendment. President, I move that Ms. CHIANG Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po be further amended by my revised amendment. And I propose a question to you, and that is that Dr. Helena Wong's amendment to Dr. CHIANG Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po be passed. And I'll put the question to you as stated. Would those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. Mr. Ibrahim claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute. Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no problems, voting is closed. Display the result. Result. Members returned from FCs 26 present, 7 yes, 8 no, 11 abstentions. Members returned from GCs 24 present, 10 yes, 4 no, 9 abstentions. I think the question is not agreed by majority respective of each of the 2 groups of members present. I declare the amendment negative. Mr. Michael Tian, as the amendments of Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po have been passed, you may now move your revised amendment. President, I move that Dr. CHIANG Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po be further amended by my revised amendment. And I propose the question to you, and that is that Mr. Michael Tian's amendment to Dr. CHIANG Lai-wan's motion as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. John Kwok-che, and Mr. Chan Kim-po be passed. And I'll put the question to you as stated. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. Sin Chung-kai claims a division. The division bell will be rung for 1 minute.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no problems, voting is closed. Display the result. Result. Members from FC's 26 present, 19 for, 5 against, 2 abstentions. Members returned from GC's 25 present, 15 yes, 3 no, 6 abstentions. The question is agreed by a majority respective each of the 2 groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Ms. Hon CHIANG, you may now reply and you have 56 seconds. Thank you, President. Members, whether you are for my motion in total or in part, or you may disagree to my motion. Anyway, I hope that for the sake of young people, for development of young people, please support my motion. I now put a question to you, and that is the motion moved by Dr. Chiang Lai-wan as amended by Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Wai-keung, Mr. Kwok-che, Mr. Chan Kim-po, and Mr. Michael Tien be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority respective of each of the 2 groups of members, that is those returned from FCs and those returned by GCs, through direct elections who are present. I declare the motion as amended passed.
會待續。
The 6 members' motion is an adjournment debate motion.